What is good art? Apparently, good art is
Subjective, based on emotional skill and technical skill with no real definition.
I guess it's a good definition, but it doesn't really say anything to me. So, what is good art? Looking at the actual definition of art is the expression or application of human creative skill and imagination, typically in visual forms such as painting or sculpture, producing works to be appreciated primarily for their beauty or emotional power. A lot of people who are non-artists, as well as artists, have this ideology that art only counts if you've mastered the skill of what you're doing. But by saying something like that, you'd be saying that self-taught artists don't count. Sure, the skill that an artist has is impressive, but it's not the only ingredient to making good art. I personally think that some art that could be considered messy or not follow the norms of what good art is considered tend to be more meaningful and more visually appealing. Beauty is really difficult when it comes to explaining it in the form of art. And it's kind of funny because beauty standards are always changing and always subjective, and it depends on where you're coming from. In my psychology class right now, we're actually talking about the different schools of psychology. So, one that really stands out to me in this particular context is the school of sociocultural psychology, which is the belief that the world around you shapes the person that you are. Another one that comes to mind is biopsychosocial, the school of biopsychosocial psychology, which believes that, if I'm right, that it's a bit of an interconnecting field of different things that affect the person that you are, which I feel also affects the way that you view things and what you might believe to be beautiful or not beautiful, or what you think is good and not good. So that makes sense if we're looking at art through a biopsychosocial lens. It tells you why different people have different vibes, different things. Our brains are literally lighting up the way that we see colors, motions, symmetry. Some things we like more than other things. Some people like to have very clean wires to their brains, while others are like, they love chaos, and I think I'm one of those people. It's all about personal experience. If you grew up around nature, you might really like paintings of trees, of things like that. If you had a hard time in school, you might like really messy or sometimes even angsty art because it speaks to you more. Socially, we're shaped by what our culture tells us is valuable. Now, the sociocultural angle is a bit of the same thing, but it's kind of different. What's considered real art in one culture might not even be on the list in another one. Take, for example, abstract impressionism. It might be worshipped in New York at an art gallery, but down in Texas, it might be dismissed as something else. Street art, it could be worshipped in some places, but in other places, it's seen as vandalism. Some art is seen as revolutionary in some instances, while others, it might not be. People will argue that it's real art, but most of the time they're just talking about their own cultural bias. So pretty much when we say that we like some art more than others, it's not just our taste. It's our biology, our psychology, and society all tangled up in a big ball of like thought processes. It's kind of freeing in a way because it tells that there's no universal ranking system. It's just human brains being little stupid machines and doing whatever they want. That's why I think that arguing what real art is completely misses the point. It's not about what's official or universal, but it's about what resonates with you in that moment. That resonance is part of the art, the comprehension, the understanding the person, the ability to objectify the art to your current situation so that it means something to you is a part of it. But back to beauty, like what I was supposed to be talking about. Take Van Gogh, for example. His art is considered beautiful now, but in his lifetime he was kind of considered weird. What about art that's intentionally ugly? Art that's meant to make you feel some kind of way, meant to make you feel disgusted with weird textures, distorted faces, and uncomfortable color combinations. Sometimes having ugly art is the point of the art. So if we count art as only things that are pretty, half of art is gone. Money can get shady. It can get really shady and get really messy really quickly. If a piece sells for millions, it's, oh, that's such a masterpiece. But the same painting can sit in someone's garage at a garage sale and nobody looks at it twice. And that brings the question of, is the art actually, quote, good, or is it, quote, good because a rich person said so? Now, the banana in the room. the banana that taped to the wall that sold for $120,000. I remember it got clowned on for a good bit, but it did what it was supposed to do. It made people feel something. That is, in theory, a form of art. So the banana wasn't about the fruit itself, it was about the commentary. There's consumerism, what we value, and how ridiculous the market can be, especially the art market. The banana is the vehicle, it's not the punchline. That's the thing about art, is that it doesn't have to be perfectly rendered or super beautiful, super tied together. It doesn't have to have a clear message in order for it to spark conversation. But it did what it was supposed to do. Art can have all different kinds of meanings, and that's what makes it so special and so unique, such a unique form of expression. So, sure, it is easy to laugh at the piece, but the fact that we're still talking about it means that it served its purpose. There's also the aspect of fame to art. The idea that if nobody sees the art, it's not art. That doesn't make sense. There's entire sketchbooks and drawers and hidden pieces and attics and things that nobody will ever see because they haven't posted them online or they'll never be uncovered, but those are still art. Really and truly, sometimes some of the most authentic stuff will never be seen because it hasn't been shown to the world, and there's nothing wrong with that. Meaning is a really tricky wagon when it comes to art or what you consider art. Yes, it does carry meaning. Art typically carries meaning, but the meaning is so subjective. I'm going to poke at abstract art for this. I actually used to hate abstract art. I thought it was horrible. I thought it was stupid. I didn't even want to call it real art because I thought that you were just throwing stuff on a canvas and saying, oh yeah, this is art, but I don't have any technical skills, so I'm just going to say that it's abstract and say that I know what I'm doing. After I did abstract art and I took a photo, I abstracted it, I broke it down into shapes and colors and things like that, I finally got an understanding of what abstract art actually is. It is art. It still has the same amount of meaning, the same amount of skill as somebody who does technical art. It's just shown in a different form. So, quick little rapid fire. Skill, it doesn't matter if you've learned art in school or from YouTube tutorials, it is still art. The beauty of your art, sometimes the art that isn't as clean has a little bit of a deeper meaning than the pretty art. As far as money goes, clout does not equal art, and we know this. For fame, if a tree doodles in the forest, nobody's going to see it, but it's still art. And as far as meaning goes, we all make our own. So you could look at it from two angles. If you look at it from the angle of skill, just because you didn't go to art school doesn't mean that your art counts any less or it doesn't count at all. Some of the best artists that I know are self-taught from YouTube tutorials, Pinterest, just looking at things and drawing what you see. It blows degrees out of the water. Skill is practice when you think about it. It's time and love and an admiration or an obsession for things that not a certificate can prove or say that you've been approved for, or, oh, I'm good at this, I'm good at that. But then there's the side of meaning, which I like a little bit more. And it's interesting because most of the time art doesn't mean anything, or it's like, oh, I'll define the meaning later after I finish the piece. Now, sometimes people will be like, oh, I did this when I was sad, so the art is supposed to convey that emotion. Boom, that's their meaning right there. Meaning is a really slippery subject, and it's not locked into the artist's brain most of the time. Sometimes it comes to life with the piece itself. So if art had to be perfect to have a real message, then we'd lose a lot of masterpieces in the world. Sometimes art existing is just enough. So, whether it is skill, beauty, money, fame, or meaning, none of those boxes can really define art. If it connects, if it resonates, or if it makes someone feel anything, then it's art. End of story. That's enough about theory. I think art isn't in the rules, the money, or galleries. To me, art is about expression. If it moves you, if it communicates something, if it's ugly, messy, done in 2 seconds, it's art. If it's a kid's little math doodle on a worksheet or a painting in a museum, it's still art if it makes you feel some kind of emotion. Now, back in middle school, I used to sketch in my little math notebook, and we had the big paperback math notebooks where we would take them home, and they had all the problems in them, and we would have to do XYZ pages. But I wasn't bored. I had fun. I feel like those doodles, though they might not have been masterpieces, definitely had my personality in them. They had my humor, my interests at the time, my characters, things that I enjoyed, things that brought me some kind of happiness and emotion. They weren't serious or real, but they were still enough for me to validate them as art because that's what they were. They're art. My thought is that people spend a lot of time trying to police what counts as art. Who benefits from that? People who gatekeep, people who think that they're more elite than others or better than others, the people who want to convince you that certain names are worth millions. Art itself has existed since cavemen were drawing on the walls, and nobody was saying, is this a good drawing of a buffalo? So, yes, in theory, it is easy to clown on art that's made millions that you might not think is art, but the fact that it even sparked a conversation means that it's art. That's exactly what it's supposed to do. It sparked an emotion, it made conversation, it made people mad, confused, curious, sometimes even happy, sometimes uncomfortable. Art is supposed to make an impact, and if it is, then it's done its job. So I think what my core belief is that art isn't about fame, skill. It's what I've said about 5 times now. If it makes a connection, if it makes you stop, if it makes you think, if it makes you, and if it inspires you to say, oh, let me do this. I remember that I had to do that. This is such a cool concept. I would love it if I could do something like that. Then, boom, you're looking at art. If you've created something that gives someone that feeling, congratulations, you are an artist. Now, there is a bit of a weirder side of art, weird, wonky, whatever you want to call it. It's not the stuff that's just paintings on the wall, because if art is expression, connection, communication, sometimes it's weird communication. Sometimes it's like somebody screaming in a language that you don't understand, but you still understand what they're saying. An example of this would be performance art. People like Marina Abramovich, who sat at a table for hours and just let strangers stare at her. There's no words, it's no paint, there's no singing, but people cried. People sat and felt like their life flashed before their eyes. It's really weird how the mind works and how that's the reaction that some people had, but also think about how those people were feeling along with their reactions. Now, if we're going down even weirder, there is an artist who canned his own poop and sold it. Yeah, that's gross. It's absurd, but it's also commentary, I guess. It was a big middle finger at the art world that says you'll buy anything if it's labeled art. And the craziest part about it is that people actually bought it for like 6 figures. So at that point, poop isn't the art. The debate itself was the art. I think the weird side of art is where you see people the most themselves. Like what people do in their free time, the inner workings of their mind, things like that. You see the person for the person and not for the persona that they put on in front of other people. I personally think that weird art kind of tests our patience. It makes us stop and ask, what is art? If you get a painting and you instantly recognize it, that's cool. But if you see something super out of the blue, like a giant inflatable blimp duck floating on water when it's supposed to be floating in the sky, it makes you like, what the heck? What am I looking at? And confusion is still a reaction and is still engagement. And this is going to sound really stupid. I know it's weird to think of it like this, but I think that when the universe gives us odd or abnormal art to look at, it's like, you know, the TikTok ads that are like, you've been scrolling for too long. I think that's what that's like. It's the universe telling us, hey, stop and look around for a second. I want you to think about this and I want you to just breathe. I wonder if that's like the secret. Like, a good way to have your art be remembered is to make it weird. Make it interesting. Make it something that people are going to be like, what are we talking about? What was the idea? What made you come up with this? I think those kind of things are how you get people to stick to your art, or how you get people stuck on your art, how you get questions, inquiries. It gets the brain thinking in a way that we just have to know the answer to. Honestly, as weird as it can be, I think that weird art is on top of valid. I think that it's incredibly essential because art isn't just supposed to be beautiful, you know? It's supposed to, on top of make you feel things, make you think. Sometimes the feeling is confusion, disgust, laughter, anger. Sometimes weird stuff tells us more about what it means to be human than a super pretty, super polished picture ever could. You can't mention the weird side of art without mentioning NFTs. And this could just be me, but I personally don't think that it's real art. Like, they're not. To me, they're more of a flex or like clout type of thing that actual art is. Now, like we've been over like 5 times, art is about expression, impact. An NFT is a digital receipt that tells you that you own a JPEG of something. Congratulations, but I don't think you own the image. I think you own the receipt, and I don't think that should be considered real art. It's like paying thousands of dollars to say you own the idea of something, but then you don't actually get that something. Now, you could very easily tie my argument of NFTs not being real art with the argument of digital art isn't real art, and it absolutely is. Some of the most jaw-dropping art that I've seen is digital, but an NFT is not art. It's the wrapper around the art. It's kind of like mistaking a gift bag with the present. Now, what irritates me personally about NFTs and the whole craze around them was that it wasn't celebrating art. It was more like the stocks. People weren't like, oh my gosh, this pixelated art speaks to my soul so much. It was more of, if I buy this cartoon monkey, then I can sell it for 20 times the original price by next week. It's not art, it's just stocks and gross math and number stuff. But it does get kind of weird and it gets really difficult, but that's why it fits into the whole discussion. NFTs force us to ask the ugliest question: what makes art valuable? And because with NFTs, the answer isn't skill, beauty, or meaning, in my eyes, I think that it's just hype, social media, and FOMO. If you don't have something, then you miss out. So that means that you should totally get this thing so that you can be cool or whatever the flip. I don't know. But that's how it got its value. Now, the kicker is, even though I don't think that NFTs are art in the deep and super expressive sense, they are a part of art history. Because people have fought over them and spent millions and argued and written articles and had cultural impact. What I'm doing right now, me talking about NFTs, means that it's making me feel something, means that in theory, it could be art. But it's weird because in future art classes, people could possibly be talking about like NFTs and the boom of NFTs and the rise of NFTs. And they're wondering, why did we, the people in the present, lose our minds over this stuff? So to go back to the question, are NFTs art? In my opinion, no. But they are important to the conversation of what art is and isn't. Unfortunately, yes. And that's probably the weirdest part. The fact that even though there's stuff that we don't take seriously, especially the stuff that we don't take seriously, it still changes how we perceive art as people, as humans, as living beings. Now, we tread into really dangerous territories and discussions when talking about this next topic, but comparing the value of art. Why is one painting worth $500 million while another one is worth $50 off of Etsy? The thing about it is, the value of art isn't solely about the skill. If it was, then random hyper-realistic pencil artists off of social media and students would be way richer than Picasso ever was, but the skill doesn't equal the value. Sometimes, as much as I hate to say it, it's just about who made it. If Picasso or another big artist doodled a stick figure on a napkin, it could sell for millions. But if I or a middle school student doodled the same thing, then that's just a paper towel that's been wasted. It's not about the art, it's about the name that's attached to it. It's also very similar in the artist world as far as commissions go, where sometimes just having a name attached to something makes it so much more valuable. It's literally like having a name brand drawing. It makes it more valuable to have that name associated with it, even though the actual value of it should be much lower. There are also other scenarios where it could be about rarity. If there's a one-of-a-kind painting versus something that's mass-produced, scarcity makes people lose their minds. If we value diamonds because they're so rare, it's going to be the same with art. This is not to say that this happens all the time, but there are rare cases like Andy Warhol making prints of soup cans. And it's technically not unique, but it's still valued insanely high. So scarcity isn't always a hard rule to consider. There's also the cultural timing. Like, take Van Gogh, for example. His art was worthless at the time of his life when he was alive, but now his art sells for hundreds of millions. The shift didn't happen because the paintings changed, the culture itself changed, and that's what made the art more valuable. I personally believe that comparing art is kind of a trap because we start treating art like stocks instead of stories and emotions and different things that we're trying to convey. A painting worth $2 million is not 2 million times better than a $1 doodle in a sketchbook. The monetary value isn't the soul of the price, it's the hype, the history, and the market in which you're trying to sell or market your artwork in. But then at the same time, value comparison is part of what keeps the art world alive. Like, take for example auction houses, collectors, museums, things like that run on comparison. Someone has to decide that this art is worth more than that, and it shapes how the rest of us see it too. It's like a monopoly in economy. By that logic, that means that when we compare the value of art, we're not comparing the art itself, if you get what I mean. We're comparing the context, who made it, when it was made, why it matters, and who wants it. The canvas and the paint are the same. They cost the same. But it's the story and the meaning that's been wrapped around it. That's what the price tag is buying. So after all that ranting, we've kind of come to a conclusion. Skill, beauty, money, fame, meaning, NFTs. Where does that leave us? What is real art, let alone good art? The truth is, all art is good art. Maybe it's none of it. Maybe it's to the point where it isn't to nail down one definition, but to finally admit that art is really slippery and really messy, but it's also alive. It's personal and it's emotional. For me, I think that art is proof that someone felt something and tried to pass that feeling along. $5 million or a doodle that's worth nothing. Both are still moments of humanity that's been captured and something that we as a people can all share. And the wild thing is that art doesn't stop at the canvas or when you're done with your sculpture. Art is in conversation right now. I mean, obviously, I have a drawing in the background. Conversation, arguments, debates, everything. If people are talking about it, if people are thinking about it, if they're inspired by it, if it makes them feel anything, like I've said, then it is art. That is a form of art. It makes me think that instead of asking what is real art or what is good art, the better question is, what does this piece do for me? Does this piece make me happy? Does this piece make me sad? Does this piece make me laugh? And if the answer is yes, even in the smallest way, then it is art. What's great, and I think what's super beautiful about it, is that your answer doesn't have to match mine. Her answer doesn't have to match his, and that's part of the magic. Art is never just the thing, it's more of the space that opens between people. So I don't know if we'll ever have one neat definition of what art is, but I think that that's what makes it worth chasing and worth looking into. And the fact that art refuses to sit still, it keeps growing and evolving with us, which keeps pulling us in, but also pushing us to continue to find out what we think art is. Now, before I'm able to wrap this up, I want you to think about the last thing that you've made. If it's a doodle, a TikTok, a photo that you took on accident, or a photo that you took on purpose, anything that you've made, the last thing that you did. Ask yourself, was that art? And my answer to your question is going to be yes, because everything is art. Everything is good art. Now, after my insane amount of rambling, I'll let the rest of this video be silent, and I will see you later. Or in the outro, that too. I hope that you enjoyed, and I hope that my rambling wasn't too much. Even with the script, I still somehow managed to go off and all over the place. But I hope you took something from this, and I hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like and subscribe so that I'll know, and I'll know what kind of content to make in the future. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day.